Have you ever said something as a joke and it just kind of spirals completely out of control? Well, that's pretty much this whole series right now. Not that it's even really fair to call it a series, since I only just thought of a name for it and for the army, and that was at like 3 a.m. on a caffeinated fever dream. Anyway, welcome to part 3 of what I'm now calling Love, Death, and Nurgle. I'm gonna level with you. This video is largely gonna be me talking about philosophy and cosmic horror, set to some footage of me sculpting my Sorcerer, finishing up my Beasts of Nurgle, and a sneak peek at my next big boy. Cosmicism. The philosophy of cosmicism states that there is no recognizable divine presence such as God in the universe, and that humans are particularly insignificant in the larger scheme of intergalactic existence. The most prominent theme is humanity's fear of their insignificance in the face of an incomprehensibly large universe, a fear of the cosmic void. I've mentioned a few times now on the channel that I love cosmic horror. Not just your mom and dad's classic Cthulhu, but specifically the idea that knowledge is not always power, that in some cases it's actually more of a detriment than a benefit. If we look at the textbook definition of this concept, we are dealing with 3 main themes, or at least 3 that have continued to inspire this project: helplessness, the unknown, and fear. In classic Lovecraftian horror, and the many ways it's been interpreted, a common element which evokes a feeling of helplessness is the gargantuan scale of the Great Old Ones. So naturally, I wanted my sculpts to be outlandishly big for 28mm scale. In fact, that's the biggest criticism of my Daemon prints, its scale for tabletop games. Not that that matters, because I'm never going to actually play this as an army. Setting my Daemon prints up on massive stilt-like legs, I set an expectation for the rest of the gang, toning it back down with the 3 Beasts of Nurgle, but staying within the theme of helplessness. Everything should be larger, which is why I honestly struggled for so long with my Nurglite Sorcerer. Part of me wanted to just go really big again and fly in the face of my fellow hobbyists, but sometimes scary things can come in small packages. So instead, I forced myself to try sculpting at a much smaller scale than I'm used to, but still intimidating in stature compared to your standard Orc Boy or Space Marine. When thinking about the unknown and cosmic horror, I think what we're really trying to focus on is existential dread, insignificance, impotence, that gut punch you get when you spend too much time looking up into the night sky and let your mind drift just a little too long into the black. How do you take such complex feelings and emotions and put them into a visual medium? My way to cheat this is the uncanny valley. There's tons of examples of this where it's done unintentionally, but what if we not only do it on purpose, but with a certain level of animosity to the viewer? Or, just making things look scary on purpose. I've come to realize that standard Games Workshop Nurgles would be way more work for conversions because of the feeling that I'm after. They don't have nipples or belly buttons, which I know is a pretty wild sentence to say, but looking at the lore, Nurglings are not born, but rather gestated into living boils, which I'm sure is definitely just a lore thing, and not at all an excuse to get out of having to make tiny, tiny monster nips. My army needs human features, because it inherently makes them more uncomfortable to look at. They are not grown inside of a pit of bile, they were people, now distended, swollen, bent. You could argue that because they have recognizable features, this also makes them relatable or knowable, which goes against our principle of cosmicism. However, none of the units will share similar shapes, except maybe my Nurglings when I figure those out. And I think this is a suitable compromise to get the look that I'm after. Plus, it gives me an excuse to sculpt all the little monster booties I want. The danger in this army is very real. They are towering creatures, many of whom have horrifying appendages that seem only capable of inflicting harm. But that's not what makes them frightening. Their shapes bend and twist in ways that seem more like plant matter or fungi. Something old and unencountered, evoking a feeling that is both familiar and distasteful. Their coloring is both natural and abnormal at once, the sickly sweet pink viscera spilling on the fields below, the radioactive amber boils glistening in the sun, bursting without warning as they lumber forward, all glowing against the backdrop of the pale flesh. And that's when it hit me. We name things out of fear. The word for bear, the animal, it actually comes from Proto-Germanic tribes, who changed their name for it out of fear. They believed speaking its true name might summon the beast, which made me think, in this alternate reality, where the very universe is seated in death and misery and chaos, whatever the true name of this army of Nurgles is, it doesn't matter, because no one would understand it. In the guttural screeches and screams, it would be lost. This army has no need for titles any more than warnings. They share their gifts gleefully. Their name is unimportant. It's the name that we give them that matters. A name born out of fear. They are the tide washing over our landscapes. Among the pitch black of a grim-dark future, there is nothing more terrifying than the pale. If you're still around, thank you so much for watching to the end of this video. It was really fun to make and record. I like to try to keep things interesting for you, not only as a viewer, but also as a listener. So if you enjoyed this video, please let me know by liking and maybe sharing with a friend. Actually, you know what? Maybe send them the first video in the series and then let them work up to this one. Otherwise, they're gonna think you're the weird friend. As always, I hope you're looking after yourself, and I'll be back soon with some fun projects. Until the next one, bye! Right. Sorry. I said there'd be a sneak peek.